Let's turn our attention to Visual Studio 2010, where I'm going to create a new project, and I'm going to select an ASP.NET MVC3 web application. Razor becomes available with MVC version 3. We'll call this project Razor View, and we'll have this dialog that will allow us to pick if we want to generate a solution using an empty template or an internet application. The primary difference being that an internet application sets you up to use forms authentication and provides the ability to log in, whereas an empty template is relatively empty. Our view engine, I'm going to select Razor, and after I click OK, Visual Studio will give me a solution that includes no controllers, and the views folder is populated. We'll talk about what some of these things are in here in just a bit. Since we picked the empty project template, we start with an empty application. We don't even have a single controller inside of here. So my first job will be to add a home controller. That's a controller that the default entries in the routing engine will reach this controller if I just request the root of the website, and it will go to the index action of that home controller. Inside of here, I'll just return the default view result, which will look for an index view. Let's go ahead and add that view. What I'll need is a new folder here called Home, and inside of the Home folder, a view called Index. This view is going to use the Razor engine. You could also pick ASPX here, but we'll stick with Razor. I could make a strongly typed view, but we don't have a model to use as yet to make this a strongly typed view. We'll come back to that later. I could also select a layout or master page for this template, but I'm going to uncheck that and we'll revisit layout a little bit later. When I click Add, I just want a plain simple Razor view. Notice that a Razor view has a CS.HTML extension. If you're building your MVC application using Visual Basic, that will be a VB.HTML extension. At the top of this file is a code block that is explicitly setting this layout property to null. We'll come back and revisit that a little bit later. For now, what I want to do is just hit Control F5 to make sure that we have an application that will run. And we get a blank page, which is what I expected. There's really no output here, but we didn't see any compilation errors, so I know that things are working. Let's add some C# code to make things more interesting. If I want to write some C# code inside of a Razor view, the first thing I'll do is type the @ symbol. That tells the parser that I'm going to be doing something in code. Let's create a for loop. So we'll say in I equals 0 to I is less than 10, I++, and add in our curly braces. Inside of the loop, I'm just going to say @I, which is essentially telling Razor, output the value of I here. Let's refresh our page, and you can see we get 0 through 9 as we would expect. So what happens if I want to break those numbers up, if I want to put each inside of their own div, let's say? Well, the beautiful thing about Razor is I can just enter HTML inside of my C# block, and I can just enter C# code inside of an HTML block, and Razor is going to figure out which is which and do the proper thing. If I save this, we'll come back out to our view and refresh it again. And now you can see that each number is inside of its own div. It's the same HTML we would be producing as if we were using ASPX files, but the markup is cleaner. It's easier to read, it's easier to write.